This video contains some questions and answers from the last series on dimensional analysis and cause and effect in astrotometry. I'd like to thank everyone who has watched this series so far and has kept up on astrotometry. What I have presented so far is supported by observations and discoveries that relate to the nature of the Earth's hypersymmetry with things that are seen outside the Earth's orbit. And so in astrotometry, the approach is to sort out the underlying mechanics of electromagnetic energy by looking at the relationship between matter and energy as it relates to what we observe happening in the cosmos. If you don't understand the last series, you might want to start with the videos on hypertime and the hypertime shadows. There are three very solid, significant discoveries that are sort of the foundations at this point of understanding the theory scientifically. And those are the correlations between coronal holes and earthquakes, the correlation between the coronal mass ejection and the formation of a tropical cyclone on the Earth, and the hypertime foreshadow that is left on the Sun by the incoming sun-grazing comet, which is by far the most interesting of the phenomenon. What I've presented so far is just the beginning. It is sort of the groundwork, the framework for what I will be discussing in the future videos. The primary focus of astrotometry will be trying to understand the actual construction, the actual nature of the astrotome and how we are related to it. Okay, so I'm going to start with the older questions first. Lots of really great questions, and I'll try to knock them all out here. I don't know how long it's going to take. It might take quite a while. You are saying that if an object moves in front of the Earth's orbit, the Sun shows a sunspot. Okay, no, that's not really what I'm saying. And if you look at the hypertime analysis of the relationship between the Sun and the Earth and the incoming sun-grazing comet, for example, what I'm saying is that the Earth, that all matter is being translated through time-space across the axis that we see as the light that's coming from the Sun. And so we see this photon coming from the Sun, and this photon indicates the axis across which the matter on the Earth is translated through time. And that translation creates the perception of the photon. And so this is a perceptual illusion that I've discovered about the nature of electromagnetic radiation, about light itself. And so I'm unraveling one of the core physical features that underlies what we have previously discovered in our particle physics. And so what I'm trying to say is that this object that comes in leaves a shadow on the Sun, a foreshadow on the Sun, when it enters the Earth's orbit in an inconsistent way. In other words, it's the consistency of this object's orbit that creates the inconsistency in the time-space translation anomaly that we see as the Sun. According to astrotometry, the Earth is being translated through this and through every other electromagnetic moment that exists in the interplanetary magnetic field between the Earth and the Sun. And so this object is disturbing because of the nature of its orbit. This object is disturbing the translation of the Earth through time. And so we're seeing this not because it's on the Sun, but it's disturbing our translation through time. And so we see it here because there is normally this waveform that exists between the Earth and the Sun that gets disturbed. And so there's a waveform, a hypertime wavelength, that is the path that this magnetic wave would travel from the Earth to the Sun, and that underlying electromagnetic wave is moving in two directions. It undulates back and forth. We see it as a particular polarity because of the disposition between the Earth's pole and the Sun's pole, but the underlying electromagnetic wave gets disturbed. And this causes the anomaly that we see on the Sun. It's a perceptual illusion, in a sense, that is caused by the sun-grazing comet. And so if you look at what the sun-grazing comet is, and so if you consider the hypertime translation of the comet as it moves through space, if you consider this its translation through hypertime, you can see that its interference, the way that it interferes with the Earth's movement through hypertime, is related to its own manifestation. There is a hypersymmetry that exists in its own translation. So it is also being translated through the primary time axis. And so it's inconsistency that is hypersymmetric with the perception that we have on the Earth of its disturbance. If this object ends up colliding with the Sun, we see a coronal mass ejection from this point. From the place where it will hit, we see a coronal mass ejection. A modern solar physicist might tell you that there's no correlation between this ejection and the comet itself because of this spot, because this active region already exists before the comet hits. This region is already boiling and bubbling before there is an ejection when that object hits it. And the reason that in the modern three-dimensional analysis our solar physicists have not understood this is because they don't understand the nature of hypertime and the fact that the Earth and the comet are being translated through a hypersymmetric cosmos, or the astrotome. And so this is an incredibly deep understanding of something that we are just now getting to understand about the nature of light itself. And so there's something about the nature of light and electromagnetism that moves our physical matter through time.